The NBA is now in week 2 of the season, and I think the Eastern Conference is pretty much laying out exactly how people thought that it would. I'm gonna go over my Eastern Conference power rankings now. This isn't in any particular order outside of grouping these teams together towards the end of the season. This is how I'm projecting the NBA season to work out in the East. So as of right now, these are the teams that I think are going to be tanking. These are the three rebuilding teams. Now, it's clear right now that all three of these guys or all three of these teams are going to be pushing for the draft and free agency for next season. The Indiana Pacers, let's start with them. Tyrese Halliburton, brutal Achilles injury in the finals. Miles Turner goes to the Bucks, and then there's been a couple other knick-knack injuries for this season. Benedict Mathurin's had a couple. Andrew Nembhard got hurt, I believe, in game one. So there's just not a lot going right for the Pacers right now. Not to mention they don't have their first round pick, I don't believe. So this is kind of disaster class year for Indiana. I don't know if they're going to be able to recoup any of these law or any of this lost time. They're going to have to find somebody in free agency. Right now, I guess it's just about developing some of the young guys. Cam Jones is there from Marquette. He got into some legal trouble early on in the season, I believe. So there's a lot of development going on here with Indiana with some of the younger guys, but the question is, can they ever get back to the finals with this core? And I just don't necessarily think so. It's hard to have somebody come off of an Achilles tear to come back and not only have to be just as good, but probably be even better than he was, because that finals run was a miracle. Some of those shots that were made by Halliburton, absolutely phenomenal, but the extra bounce in that game versus the Knicks and the Cavs as well, there's just a lot going into this that I think needs some context going into next season. The Pacers were unbelievably good, but statistically speaking, it's an absolute anomaly. There's somebody on TikTok that I have followed over the summer that did a lot of good, deep analytics research on the probabilities of what happened with the Pacers playoff run. And she said that it was literally like a 1 in a million chance. So the probability of them doing this again, I think, is really low. So interesting outlook for Indiana, probably the most depressing of the three. Let's move on to Brooklyn. 5 first-round picks from this past year's draft. And honestly, outside of Igor Dimin, I don't know anybody else that's going to see like serious minutes this upcoming season. Right now, they have Cam Thomas on a qualifying offer. They traded for Michael Porter Jr., who's off their books after next season. I don't know where they're going to move in terms of direction, because going fully young with all of these young draft picks and the more assets that they have from moving on from guys like Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, there's just not a lot, in my opinion, that has the Brooklyn Nets written all over it in terms of building young assets into franchise cornerstone pieces. Igor Dimin might be that, but other than that, I don't really see anybody else on this Nets team that's going to lead them into the future. And that's kind of what is the depressing outlook if you're a Nets fan. I mean, you've been here before, right? Post Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade. I mean, you were here right after moving on from Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and James Harden. It just seems like the Nets are back to square one yet again. And quite frankly, there's only a couple choices to make, and most of them are going to lead you right back to this issue. That's why a lot of these teams throughout professional sports, not just basketball, but looking at, for example, the Cleveland Browns, they never got the quarterback right. And look where they're at. They've yet to win multiple playoff games in the last, what is it, 25, 26 years, maybe even longer than that. I mean, the Lions have finally figured it out, but it took them 25 years. And the Cowboys have been in perpetual hell for, I don't know, all of the sins that they paid for in the 90s. So moving back into basketball, that's where it seems like the Nets are at. They go in on all of these aging stars, Darren Williams, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and it just never seems to work out because they're buying too high on some descending or devaluing assets like these old aging guys. Right now, they're really young, but I could definitely see them packaging a bunch of these young players together to try to move on for, a pair of middle-aged superstars like a Devin Booker, for example, trying to get Devin Booker in a couple years. That could be something that the Nets would do. So kind of a distasteful outlook on what they've got going on. The most or the biggest bright spot of all these rebuilding teams is the Washington Wizards to me. I love what they've got going on right now. It seems like they're moving in the right direction. They might be playing CJ McConnell just a little too much, but he's a vet. Maybe they're trying to build him up as like a tradable asset, but I love how they've developed Alex Sarr. Keyshawn George is playing really well. Kubali is going in and out of the rotation. I believe he's been on some minutes restrictions due to injury. Trey Johnson, rookie out of Texas, man, that guy can shoot the hell out of the basketball. I love what they've got going on in Washington. I think this could be a perennial playoff contender in the next 3 or 4 seasons if they can keep this young core together. So those are my 3 rebuilding teams in the East. Let's look at some semi-competitive teams right here. Now, some of these teams like the Raptors and the Hornets are relative, and even the Bulls are relatively young. They've gotten better through their rebuilds, right? I mean, the Raptors had to reconstruct after the Kawhi championship run. They move on from Kyle Lowry. Kawhi leaves to the Clippers. Norman Powell was there for forever. Obviously, they moved off DeMar, and it seems like they've got a decent young core there. Grady Dick, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, and Brandon Ingram don't necessarily line up with the timeline, but RJ Barrett is there as well. I really do like what the Raptors have going right now. It just like even their rookie Colin Murray Boyles from South Carolina is playing some meaningful minutes right now. Are they going to win a playoff series this year? No, absolutely not. These 5 teams are in the play-in low tier playoff mix. Once again, I don't think any of these teams are going to win a playoff series. Maybe the Atlanta Hawks, but outside of that, I don't really see anything like that. The Hornets, are they going to continue this franchise with LaMelo Ball? Is he their franchise piece? In my opinion, the answer is probably not. Even with him on the floor, they have a losing record, and he's hardly ever on the floor consistently due to injury. That's a major problem. I'm sure there's teams out there that would be willing to buy him, but the problem is his contract is massive. With this second apron and all of the talk going around that, I think tons of teams are scared to make splash moves in trades and signing in free agency. We've seen some big contracts like Kevin Durant moving to the Rockets, but once again, that's a very young team trying to compete because they got deeper than they thought they would. For a point guard like LaMelo Ball, who's pretty much a score first guard, I don't necessarily think there's a lot of buyers out there. Maybe a Milwaukee Bucks, but outside of that, I'm not necessarily sure. But moving on, let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Bulls have been extremely surprising so far this season. As of this recording, they're starting out 5-1 on the year. I've been super impressed with what Josh Giddey has been able to do. He is one of the best facilitators in the East. Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White, I don't even think has played so far this season. I have to look that up outside of this video, but he has definitely not had the impact that he has had in the past. Matas Bulas, he is a good second-year player, and a lot of these other young Bulls players have stepped up to the plate so far this season. Now, a large contributing factor to the reason that they're 5-1 is because opposing teams are shooting like 27 or 28% from 3. I actually made a TikTok about this if you want to go check it out. The Bulls opponents are shooting at an unprecedented rate, or an unprecedentedly low rate. There's just no way that it's going to keep pace. As soon as they start making threes, the Bulls will again start losing games. I think this is a perfect Chicago Bulls season in terms of, we're going to be the 7 seed. We're going to play the 2 seed. We're going to lose in the first round, but we wanted to sell tickets at the end of the year. I mean, this is not even a conspiracy theory anymore. This is kind of a wide regarded take that is 100% valid. The Bulls have just not, ever since Derrick Rose tore his ACL, the Bulls have not been a competitive playoff team. So can they make some noise and shake things up in the regular season? Absolutely. But winning a playoff series? No. Now, another team that I was kind of high on before the year started, but have been disappointed in so far this season is the Atlanta Hawks. And I thought that they could be a playoff team that could win a series. But with Trae Young and this stacked backcourt, now when I say stacked, I'm not talking talent. I'm talking busy. It's a busy backcourt. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Trae Young. Now, Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are 2 great defenders, but they're not facilitators. They're not elite shooters. Trae Young relies on pace. Now, Dyson Daniels does actually increase the pace of this Hawks team statistically. But when Trae Young is talking about his pace, it's much different than Dyson Daniels, right? Dyson Daniels wants to get to the cup. Trae Young wants to be able to kick it to a shooter. They're not the same thing. And so that's the main issue right now with this Hawks team, in my opinion. And it's kind of the reason why I don't necessarily know if they're going to be able to compete. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, in my opinion, could be a great addition. A lot of these things have to gel because the Hawks are a much different team than they were last year. Not to mention Jalen Johnson, who plays at an all-star level pretty consistently. All of these players, they mix and match with these lineups, but none of them really stack up to me. And so that's why I don't necessarily know if this Hawks team is going to turn into a playoff team. I was very high on them. Now I'm a little low on them. So I've got them in the semi-competitive column. Now, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the Boston Celtics. This Celtics team, of course, is reeling from the Jason Tatum injury. And the thing that they lack the most on this Celtics team is shot creation. Jaylen Brown is an okay shot creator. He cannot really dribble the basketball like the elites of the NBA, despite him being an all NBA caliber player, right? Derek White is not a great facilitator. He's a very good shooter, an elite defender, but there's not really a point guard on this team. And that was okay when the Celtics were playing at a high pace last year and just cranking threes over and over and over again. And that's kind of what they're doing this year, but they don't have the rebounding. They don't have the defense to pair with that like they did last year. Peyton Pritchard getting more minutes is good for shot creation and or facilitating, but it's bad for the defense. And then of course Anthony Simons coming in from the Trailblazers fits exactly that same mold, right? So the Celtics are moving away from their identity temporarily due to Tatum's absence. I thought maybe they could compete if they just continued to play with high pace and just try to outshoot teams, but the size difference and the defensive lack thereof of Tatum is going to impact this Celtics team more than I thought. So I have them in the semi-competitive column or competitive column. So could they actually move into the playoffs? Maybe. But out of all these teams that could make noise in the playoffs, I'll give the Atlanta Hawks the benefit of the doubt. Now let's actually talk about playoff teams. Now, these are teams, in my opinion, that can actually win playoff games. And when I say playoff games, I mean playoff series, right? We've seen the Bucks do it in the past. They've been disappointing since their NBA Finals run. The Magic have yet to do it, but they were very competitive with the Celtics last year. The Pistons took the Knicks to the brink. I think they're improving, although I think they're missing Malik Beasley more than anything. Could we see him back on an NBA court? Probably not after the Terry Rozier scandal. And speaking of the Rozier scandal, this Miami Heat team, I've seen it been called boring, but man, they are scorching hot right now on the offensive end. Now, that will probably die down a little bit as teams start to adjust. But in my opinion, this Heat team with Eric Spoelstra, who is a top 3 coach in the league, I don't want to hear any debates about that. They can absolutely make some noise in the playoffs. They can compete with all 3 of these teams and, you know, factoring in injuries and whatnot, they could beat my finals contenders. It's not like none of these 4 teams are, far and away from the finals. I just don't think, if you simulated the Eastern Conference 100 times, I think the top 3 teams in the East reach the finals probably 85% of the time. And then in that 15%, you have these 4 teams that somehow make a miracle run, kind of like the Pacers did last year, right? I thought the Pacers would be in this playoffs category, and they exploded to the top of the East due to some injuries, of course, but also due to the fact that their play was just out of this world. So I love these playoff teams, even Milwaukee, who, by the way, was supposed to be in this semi-competitive column. But let me tell you what, Giannis Antetokounmpo is on a mission this year. He is determined to be one of the best players in the NBA, stay healthy, and get their team back to the Eastern Conference Finals. So very, very intrigued at what this Bucks team is doing. The Orlando Magic have been off to a slow start, but they're doing an entirely new system, right? Paolo Franz and Desmond Bane in that monster trade with Memphis. It's going to be interesting to watch those 3 pair together, but it's going to take time. They've been off to a slow start, like I said. I don't believe that they're going to continue that. By about December, maybe January, you'll start to see it click and the wins will follow. Meanwhile, the Pistons, I really wanted to put the Pistons in finals contention, but I really do think, I said this earlier, that they're missing out on Malik Beasley. That volume shooting is something that is dearly missed. Now, Duncan Robinson is there, but he is not going to fill the shoes of Malik Beasley, who, quite frankly, was playing the best ball of his career. I mean, he was just second in the NBA in three-pointers made. I thought he was going to do it yet again this season. He was Cade Cunningham's like go-to guy when the Pistons needed a shot. That wasn't, of course, taken by Cade himself. So I think that the Pistons could 100% contend for the finals, but it's going to take an explosion of a young player like Jaden Ivey coming off that gruesome leg injury, or Jalen Duren just becoming DeAndre Jordan from like 2012 or 2013, who shoots 70% and registers 2 or 3 blocks a game. 100% capable of that, but it's going to take something, an anomaly, in my opinion, for the Pistons to achieve that. So these are my 4 playoff contenders. Can they make it past the semifinals? Absolutely. But is it more than likely? Probably not. So let's talk about my finals contenders and process of elimination. You can guess who they are. These are my 3 finals contenders right now out of the East. And I will rank these. Number 3 is the Philadelphia 76ers. And the reason they're number 3 is because of injuries. Now, I am not trying to predict injuries right here. I'm simply going off the fact that history really repeats itself, right? Joel Embiid has dealt with so many injuries. Paul George has dealt with so many injuries. Even Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain has now dealt with a few injuries, right? We've got a ton of 76ers who are banged up, but I'm telling you here today that if they are fully healthy and playing at the peak of their powers because they're not having to come back from some knick-knack injury, this is absolutely a team that can boat race everyone in the East all the way to the finals. The reason I put them here at 3 is because I'm predicting that at least one of them is not going to be at 100%. Number 2 to me is the New York Knicks. Now, the Knicks look rough to start the year. We've got off-ball Jalen Brunson. That's been interesting to watch. Mike Brown is a new voice in that locker room. Will they buy in? I definitely think so, as the offense starts to thrive in this new system. The Sacramento Kings actually were very competitive with Mike Brown as the head coach. They just went in a completely new direction, as the Sacramento Kings always do. And they fired Mike Brown, in my opinion, for no reason, and just blew up the team. Traded away De'Aaron Fox, got DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. What's going on in Sacramento, only God knows, right? So New York, I think Mike Brown was an underrated hire. People weren't exactly excited to see him, especially after Tom Thibodeau finally got another team back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I definitely think New York fans and maybe even the Knicks themselves were disappointed, but overall, I think that move ended up being a good thing for New York. Moving on from this isolation pick and roll with Brunson and Cat, I don't necessarily think it was going to work, just because it's so solvable. It's not something that just can magically work every single time, because I know Jalen Brunson's very good. All NBA type player. Karl Anthony Towns is elite. He's an all NBA type center. But are these guys the creme de la creme? Are they actually top 5 players in the league? Because that's where you get into unstoppable conversations. Kevin Durant, unstoppable on offense. Stephen Curry, unstoppable on offense. LeBron James. Is that the conversation that we're going to put Jalen Brunson into? Now, I'm not trying to disrespect him at all. I definitely think he is a top 10 player in the NBA right now. But I don't necessarily think that you can put the whole weight of the team offensively onto his shoulders and have him carry the burden. Not because he's not good enough, but simply because his size and his style of play limits the abilities that he can show on the court. He's not Kevin Durant, and he's not Stephen Curry, right? Kevin Durant could just shoot over anyone. Stephen Curry can just shoot from the logo. Brunson has not shown that ability yet, and if he does, well, then I stand corrected. But for now, I think the Mike Brown system works better for Brunson and for the Knicks, because it gives him more ability to shoot open shots, which is key and consistent for the playoffs. So that's why I've got the Knicks at number 2. We're gonna have to see how this Mike Brown system ends up working out. But last but not least, the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 1. This is my team to make the NBA Finals run as it sits right now. I think the way that their team lays out, as long as they're healthy, which once again, a big contention or a big place of contention with how Darius Garland has been injured over the last several years. I think the one thing that they need to see more than anything is the improvement of Evan Mobley. And I'm going to make a video about this later, but I'll just give you kind of my like a wee bit of insight. Evan Mobley has not been the offensive engine that the Cavaliers or the NBA as a whole kind of thought that he would end up being. Obviously, everyone knew he was going to be an elite defender. I think he's the best defensive player in the league right now. Currently, I think as of this recording, he's averaging 1.7 steals, 2 blocks a game. He is one of the most versatile players in the NBA. He can guard 1 through 5, and there's no drop off. If he guards a big, he's guarding them almost at the exact same level of intensity as a point guard. So Evan Mobley has just got to put the ball in the hoop at a more efficient level, and the Cavaliers will take that next step and get to the NBA Finals. Now, all this being said, spoiler alert, none of these teams rank ahead of 1, maybe even 2 teams in the Western Conference. And I think we all know which team I'm talking about, with a certain point guard who has known or who is known as a foul baiter. I don't think so, but a lot of people do. So let me know what you think about this list. This is who I've got right now in the East: rebuilders, semi-competitive teams, playoff teams, and finals contenders. Is there anybody that you would add to one of these lists and remove from another? I'm sure that some people would like to say that the Hornets and maybe even the Raptors are in a rebuild, but I think rebuild is a definition that's kind of saved for teams that are truly looking at the bottom of a barrel and thinking, what's for next year? The Raptors could make some shocking discovery in the middle of the season that leads to wins and gets them into the playoffs. These 3 teams truly have no hope at making the NBA playoffs this year. So, that all being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. This is a new channel, and I'm super excited to continue to do it. I'm going to try to post as much as I can every week. These videos will be going out at 5 p.m., so turn on the notifications, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks again so much for watching, and we will see you next time.